Hello, if you're just joining us now, I'm Maria Moreau. I'm joined here by assignment editor and photojournalist Gary Stillwell. Thank you so much for joining us. We are continuing to follow the path of Hurricane Ian, now making its way over the Carolinas, specifically in the Charleston area where they're feeling the most impact right now. But I wanted to take this opportunity to even talk about how we understand hurricanes and how they form. And part of that is hurricane research. Now, you got the chance to travel to Biloxi to join the hurricane hunters on a 7-hour flight into Hurricane Ian. First of all, what is a hurricane hunter?
All right, so the hurricane hunters started back in the 40s as a dare. Since then, it has turned into an essential part of tracking and the science behind these hurricanes. The hurricane hunters dispatch out of several different Air Force bases around the United States, primarily Biloxi, some out of Savannah. I have been fortunate now this was my second flight with the hurricane hunters. I flew Florence back in 2017, but I will say this flight was the roughest flight I've been on with the hurricane hunters by far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw just from those reports the devastation that Hurricane Ian left behind, but talk to me a little bit about going into that storm. I mean, those initial moments where you realized this was something completely different.
Well, this flight was going to be a landfall flight, so this was going to be one of the last flights taken as Ian was making landfall that morning. So when we reported to the base around 7 a.m., it took us about 2 hours to get our debrief about the mission we were going to take. And we have video, so we will cut to some video here in a few minutes and talk about that and the science and the drop zones and explain the actual, to get back to your real first question, we will explain that science and how they work with the Hurricane Center in real time, which really is how we get our alerts in real time out to people who are going through that surge. So if you want to take a look at some of that video, we could probably roll that out.
Now. So walk me through all of this.
So what we're looking at are drop zones. They're in the metal case tubes right now, so here shortly they'll pull them out. So the gentleman that we're looking at here, the hurricane hunters are made up of the Air Force as well as some techs from the Navy. And these gentlemen are getting ready.
Did you get a chance, I imagine in those several hours that you were up there, to talk to them about the training involved in being on this flight?
Oh, absolutely. The gentleman, later in the video you'll see, this is actually, hold on, this is the first drop zone. So we're getting close to the outer rim of the eye, and we just dropped our first node. So as soon as this happens, he'll run back to his seat and sit down, and they start sending that data back to the Hurricane Center at real time instantly once they push it or once they release. That gentleman we're looking at right there, he's 23 years old, MIT, Navy, and will go on to work on a nuclear submarine. That's the caliber of people that we have on this hurricane flight.
Clearly very knowledgeable.
And very knowledgeable people. And see, we just dropped our first drop zone. Now we're sitting down, we're analyzing data, we're sending that back to the Hurricane Center at real time.
Now, I imagine they have those earphone protection in because it's loud.
Oh, this C-130.
What does that sound like?
Okay, so the C-130, you can't hear anything. The C-130 is absolutely loud. Everyone's wearing earphones. You see people mouthing words, but we're more sign language and lip reading, poking, hand gestures, the entire flight. There is no way to interpret sound on this flight at all.
By the way, if you guys had any questions about hurricane hunters or hurricane research, just anything that you're seeing, let us know. We're monitoring our Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We'll make sure to answer them. Now, 7 hours on that flight.
Yes.
I mean, what goes through your head during those moments?
So, 2 hours of it is getting to the outer band of the eye wall. So what you're seeing here is literally just the flight getting to the eye wall, and the visibility, as you can tell, is just terrible. You can't see anything, and here soon I'll be in the cockpit with the pilots.
Looks peaceful, but it's not.
It's not. So here we go. There's two sections in the back portion of the C-130J that we're on. This gentleman's about to drop another node and send data back to the hurricane center. Shortly after he drops this, that's when, at this moment, we're pretty close to the eye wall.
Now this is near the Florida area.
Yeah, we're on the Florida coast.
That day that it made landfall.
That's correct. That's correct. There were 2 flights. The 27th flight is when they dropped about 1,200 feet in altitude quickly, and that plane took some hail damage, as we've learned. As you can see from radar here, we're very much approaching the storm. This is where the turbulence of the storm. You can see her moving around in her seat. You don't make any moves on this plane without holding and gripping something.
No, I can't imagine you can. And you talked about levitating earlier to me.
I did.
Explain that.
So, there's actual video when we're in the right as we're punching through the eye wall, where the turbulence gets so bad, and we do drop a little bit of altitude, and as I look down, I'm 5 inches off the floor as I'm holding on to the captain's seat and gripping a metal bar on the window.
That's just...
This is the science portion of, and I'm not a meteorologist whatsoever by trade. I'm fortunate in my career to have been around enough mets to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, but at this point we've dropped another drop zone, and there's our visibility gone, absolutely gone.
Now, where exactly are you? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Do you
Florida.
know at that point?
No, except for radar, and the radar didn't really, I just knew we were not at the coast at that point.
Looking out that window, I know this is the second time you're doing this. You're very seasoned in your photojournalism work, but I wanted to ask how surreal seeing this was compared to anything you've done in the past.
Right. The difference from Florence to here, Florence was a smooth flight in and out of the eye wall. Even at a Cat 5, we came through Florence at one point at a Cat 5, and it was not near as bumpy as what this storm was like whatsoever, and for my experience.
Absolutely. I mean,
and I took this shot in particular, and I held this shot a long time on purpose, because it was, for me, it's an identifier of it. This was the visibility, and this was, you can see a little bit of hail, and
I believe some Florida neighborhoods even experienced tornadoes. Were you able to see that?
No, not from where we were at, no. Those reports, what's neat is the Hurricane Center's talking to us in the plane as well, or at least to the staff. So we can get information in the plane about what's happening on the ground, as well as, like, we knew it hit as a Cat 4.
Right. And that work is so important. I mean, the updates we get from the
That's
Hurricane
right.
Center help with our own forecasts here at Atlanta News First, but to get that information as a hurricane is
Right.
happening also helps us plan and predict future events like this, and
Exactly.
make really suggestions to the Hurricane Center, to other people dealing with hurricanes, on how to plan around that.
If it's moving or whatnot. I mean, the purpose of these missions is primarily to locate the center of the storm, measure central pressure, surface winds around the eye. The drop zones go, they're measuring pressure, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction. Here we go. So here's when we got invited up to the cabin. So we had a mission for one pass through the eye. That was the initial mission that we were taking. One path in, one flight out, drop the drop zones, and then we were going to circle back and head back to Biloxi. After our first pass, I'm not sure what changed in the mission, but at that point, we were told to go back and take our seats, because the first pass in the eye wall was a rough ride. There are 4 servicemen at any time, and the radar here, if you're just paying attention, there is a red circle. That red circle is the actual eye. So as bumpy, or as most folks are going to probably think this is stable video, but at this point we're rocking back and forth, and we are moving. But we are in the outer bands of the eye wall.
I imagine the observation in this moment, especially for those scientists and researchers that you're flying with, they have to just be cognizant of every single moment, because every second is possible information that could be helpful.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So, cockpit view. We're entering. We're starting to punch and penetrate that eye wall right here, and you can see the visibility's bad. And again, I'm not a meteorologist, but Mets will tell you there is a phenomena that occurs inside the eye wall. It's a stadium dome effect that you look for. This one had the eye was not perfectly formed at this point. One side had sheared off, so we had the stadium effect. It just wasn't as impressive view as some as if you were to Google what I'm talking about right now. The stadium effect in an eye wall, if you were to Google that, you would see it's actually incredibly beautiful. There is video you'll see. At this point, we're less than 2 minutes from penetrating the eye wall, and you can already tell the flight's getting bumpier and bumpier.
That radar alone just shows you how powerful this storm is.
I'd like to remind folks too, this is raw video, and I believe we've cut the audio to this. The C-130 is so loud you wouldn't hear anything anyways, but let me just describe, and you can see the rain just whipping off the windows there.
I can play some of that audio if you would
but
like.
It's just going to sound like whistle sounds. However, there are alarms going off. The computers at the plane are talking. The pilots are communicating back and forth. Sounds that I can tell you that I'm hearing is the plane giving the pilots some forms of instructions at times. Throttle, 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 throttle down, throttle, throttle. And then you would hear autopilot engaged, autopilot engaged. One pilot is continuing to, as soon as this was a still picture I added to the video, so this did not freeze. I took multiple photos of different things here, but once we do get moving again, we're about 2 minutes from penetrating the eye wall, and that's the experience that we're really looking for.
If you could tell me a little bit about reporter Madeline Montgomery.
Yeah.
She went up there. That was actually one of her first.
That was her first
experiences
flight.
with the Hurricane Hunters. What are some of the conversations that, not that you could have a conversation, but that you had after that flight?
Okay, so we were up for about 27 hours roughly. We drove down. These are military missions. You have to remember that, and they're extremely important. They're timed out. We got notified 12 hours out that we were invited to take this flight, and so we drove down, barely slept, got a hotel room, but just enough time to situate and get ready to meet for our debrief with the military. Coming off the flight, totally exhausted. I mean, we were beat up, tired. The flight lasted 7 hours.
But then you got up there and you really got to understand the beast that is Hurricane Ian.
Oh, absolutely. And we're seeing it now. This is the point of the flight where, again, we thought this would be the first mission, and I will talk about Madeline and her experience in the cabin, because when the mission started, we were going to take one pass.
Right.
We turned that into 3 missions, and we do have a picture that Maria will show eventually toward the end of this interview of our flight path that we took through the storm here. But as we're starting to punch through, it was insane.
Now, as we talk about this,
Yes.
I think we have a few comments coming in. Edgar asking, what does Atlanta look like? I mean, this is a daunting scene already. Atlanta, from what our meteorologists have reported, from what we've heard from officials, we're not really going to see much impact. That's the hurricane headed north-northeast. What you're looking at is footage from landfall in Florida that was taken a couple days ago. But as far as Atlanta goes, we are expecting some dry weather. Really, Charleston is where that impact is going to be.
And right here, this is the eye wall. This is penetrating the eye wall. This is the pilot. This is the point where imagine driving your car and pushing the gas pedal straight to the floor as fast as you can, and then letting off to the floor, letting off. So it's a jerk back and forth motion nonstop, because he's throttling full, backing off, throttling, backing off, as well as all the instruments are talking to us loud. Giving us instructions, and you can see the rain as we're beating through that eye wall.
Now, is there
Wow.
a moment of peace when you're in the eye of the storm? I think we hear
Yeah,
that a lot
absolutely.
from people.
Yeah, the video, once we penetrate that eye wall, you'll see a shot of the half of that stadium effect that I was talking about that most Mets want to see while they're inside the eye wall. But at this point, I am gripping the back of this pilot's seat with one arm.
Just
And you
holding
can
on.
see him moving forward, back and forward. I'm rocking him.
I can't imagine what must be going through their heads. I mean, they've possibly done over 100 of these.
Oh.
But I imagine they have to be so focused in that moment just to get that flight through.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's rather amazing. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be invited and have the opportunity to take these flights. They're very important. We all know that these storms can be deadly, and sadly this one has turned and it is deadly. This moment we're penetrating the eye wall. This is when the alarms are sounding. You can see on radar we're going in. This is the point where what I'm hearing is autopilot, throttle, throttle, throttle. And the minute we get through the eye wall, this takes about roughly approximately two or so odd minutes in this segment or this sequence of video before we actually get in. But I do believe this is the levitation moment where I'm just holding things and my legs are just simply 5 inches or so off the floor. Madeline also, we talked about Madeline before,
Right.
Madeline Montgomery, my journalist on this trip. She also had that same sensation in the cockpit. We thought we were taking one pass. After we made that pass and we experienced this, and the pilots were like, this was the roughest flight that they had experienced. And you can see I can't hold a shot for anything at this moment. The dramatic effect after this, totally calms completely down. And that's the amazing part of this experience.
And as that turbulence, intensifies, they know at that point that they're near. I mean, they can see that on their radar, but
Right.
they know that this is the final moment before they are able to get in there and get most of that data that is going
That's
to go
right.
back to the National
And-
Hurricane Center.
Right, and we're dropping drop sons as we're going through that in the back. That's what Madeline is shooting in the back. We're both shooting. We both shot video on this flight. We both had to.
There's so much of this to capture and talk about. As it's making landfall, as it's impacting residents below,
Right.
just having that aerial view, not a whole lot of people get that perspective.
No, they don't. And I'm glad this is raw video. A story or a straight-on package that is a few minutes long can articulate, but watching this completely raw is a perspective that unedited, untouched, you can just see everyone's holding on. The lady behind us, she's also a pilot. She's holding on. We're all gripping the back of these pilot seats.
How many
Oh, there we go.
people-
That was absolutely, I know for a fact, that was the moment. So when she came back up, you see, that was the moment I believe our mission changed. We realized it wasn't long after that either that we were instructed to take our seats and go back down once we hit the eye wall. And we are in it. At this point, we have punched. We are almost through. And I believe we descend a little bit. Wow. This is my first time watching it in its full length like this.
Is it a different experience, I imagine, for you from standing there in that plane to now watching back on all of this from the
Yeah.
ground?
Yeah. The work we're doing is serious while you're there. You're in awe. The first hurricane flight I took, I honestly thought it would be the last. It is an experience of a lifetime to be invited to go with the Air Force up to take these flights. But it's the science and the importance of these flights, the amount of lives that it can save. One of the pilots before this mission ever took off knew just how daunting the 27th flight was, and he said he woke up with pretty much anxiety and tears over what was possibly to come over this storm.
Did you get a chance to talk to him now returning from that trip?
As soon as that flight was over, to be honest, the staff, you see that pilot, he is fighting hard to, this was the fight.
Right.
And so coming off of this flight, we didn't do any interviews. After Florence, we did interviews on the tarmac. Everyone stood around and we all had time to debrief and talk. This was not that flight. The minute this flight was over, we broke and there was no huddle.
And I imagine they just all wanted to go back to their families in that moment.
They did, and they had to do a debrief as well with the storm making landfall and not knowing the projection of if it was going to cross Florida. There were still so many unknowns. And as journalists, we do not know what's happening on the ground, period. And here we're in the eye wall, folks. This is it. This is where we go.
You see, where you were.
Yeah, and you can see how steady that shot is. Before, I couldn't have held a shot like that at all if I wanted to. And there's your eye.
Wow.
Now you can see blue sky. That's the upward of. It's amazing.
And that's
to
in
look
the
at.
hurricane.
That is the eye. We're in the center of the hurricane at that moment.
That's incredible.
That's our MIT 23-year-old. See, this was the point, and I guess the minute we hit the eye, we were told to take our seats and go back. Mm-hmm. So I believe that's when the mission changed, and apparently it did. So we're dropping more dropsons, and you can see the force in which it went down. We're still in the eye wall. I'm just shooting from a different side of the plane at this point.
What a sight.
Yeah. Now we could be punching back through the backside, but the visibility punching through, you can tell if you can see the propellers, then we're in the eye. The visibility going through the eye wall is just not there at all. See, these are the techs dropping the dropsons. There's two hatches, one in the rear of the plane and one in the middle. And I'm sitting right behind that second dropson location. Mm-hmm. And again, they drop them and they get the data in real time and they're sending that straight back to the hurricane center. One of these, you can almost see straight down to the ocean floor. I mean, that's a long shot to say that, but the visibility going down, you can see through the eye. Right. Wow, look, blue
and just
skies.
The clarity that we didn't see for the first 19 minutes of this video.
There you go.
That is incredible. I want to show people, we weren't able to get it into our system, but maybe I can show you off my phone here. Just a picture right there of the trajectory of the plane.
Great.
Now, how many hours were you up?
About 6.5 on this flight.
That is not a straight flight.
So no, and that's a great picture. You can see we flew out, we circled the storm, we fly in, drop dropsons, fly through it, drop dropsons. We did a triangle pattern.
Right, I see that here.
And flew back into the eye and flew back through. I was in the cockpit for the first fly through, and Madeline was in for the second.
Right.
She was shooting video, and she was doing the same debrief as I was getting up there as well.
And let's go through some of those pictures as well. I wanted to show that because the way that we capture these and capture these moments and talk about them really is very visual. So let's see. This is the plane. I'm going to bring my graphic down so you can see it a little better. Okay,
so that's a C-130J. That plane has been retrofitted from the outside. That plane has sensors on the outside, inside. It's a complete weather lab. It's incredibly tough. That is not this. That's the second plane I've been on. The first C-130J that I flew through Florence was retrofitted a little bit different than that aircraft.
So then we get inside, and that's where you can see.
So let's just slow down for a second here and talk about some of the stuff you've got to do before you even take off for one of these missions. All the tech, all the dropsons, everything in this aircraft has to be tied down.
Right.
Nothing loose, nothing can be able to move around whatsoever. The turbulence, anything that could move or fall or hit you could hurt you or kill you while you're in that plane. So you are with the Air Force. Everything's extremely strict, to the point. There's rules. We had the best escort, Jessica, with the 53rd. She's just wonderful. She was my escort the last time I took this flight. So at this point, we're prepping the plane. This was as soon as we got on the plane and sat down. So let's see what we have next here.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we get into more of inside the plane.
Yeah, we're still checking. That picture was a little cropped of the picture before. This gentleman's actually going through the aircraft, checking every little component of the weather system, making sure everything's plugged in as we're moving forward.
Now, how long does the just the
pre-flight's
procedure-
about an hour. Pre-flight's,
an hour.
yeah, half an hour to an hour.
And then we get
Okay,
into
yeah, so that's the Navy side of the operation. I think there were 4 naval crewmen on this flight, and during Hurricane Florence, I had naval crewmen on that flight as well. They're setting up this was probably 30 minutes prior to the first drop zone, so everyone's getting their tech, computers operational, and their lines of communication up. What do we have?
And that's actually not of the plane, of course.
Correct.
But showing you just some of the impacts, the gas stations
Right.
that had to be essentially shut off because they were impacted by Hurricane Ian.
That's right. All right.
And then in the cockpit
So
itself.
I did take some still images while we were going through the eye wall, just showing how both these pilots were navigating. And without being redundant, the alarms and the sounds that you're hearing in there, if this was my first flight, would have given me a moment of pause. To hear autopilot while you're watching 2 pilots fly, what is happening here? But I think the video was very articulate in its own right when you saw that pilot on the left literally fighting the stick there, flying through. It's an amazing aircraft.
Well,
that's one thing I can say.
It's as you said, this all started really as a dare.
It did start as a dare in the early 40s, and then it's back in around 2005, I believe, the operation changed, and that I don't want to be absolutely on the record. There's a lot of data. I would encourage anyone who wants to know more to go to the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance
And there's
Squadron's
you.
Hurricane Hunters website and read more about them, because it's amazing work that they've been doing and will continue to do. And yeah, so what's important about this photo, or what's amazing, is we're approaching the eye, but this is the outer band and there's just no visibility. That's not overexposed. That's literally why you just can't see anything, period. We're flying straight off radar at this point. Turbulence was not as bad. As you can see, I was still able to stand and take a picture with no issue. Eye wall. So instead of video, I did stop and take a few images. So that's the eye wall. And this was approaching the eye wall. That red circle off of radar just shows you how close we are. But all that green and yellow really would indicate extreme severe.
Now,
And we're Cat 4. I mean,
yeah, a Category
at that
4. I was
point.
just about to say, now that you've experienced this, a Category 4 hurricane, a major hurricane, I mean,
That's right.
what's your biggest takeaway, and what do you want to hope people know about these hurricane hunters?
it's amazing work. It's amazing work. It's necessary. It saves lives, absolutely. With being able to predict surge, predict landfall location and the timing of these storms, days and days away before they ever have a chance to hit, gives people time to evacuate, if people heed those warnings and listen to them. But the work that the hurricane hunters do and the risk that they take year after year, but storm after storm. If it's a heavy hurricane season, I can't even begin to imagine how many flights that they take. And they fly them sometimes 2 or 3 different times a day. Florence, I went out to Bermuda. This was my first time in the Gulf, flying over toward Florida. So 2 different flights, 2 different ocean sides of the look, but it was amazing. It's very important work.
I'm just so glad that you were able to take this flight and share this experience, not just with us in the newsroom, but with the viewers as well. We have more content from this flight that you took on our website. Actually.
That's right. And Monday, Madeline and I will be turning another story that will go, that we'll be bringing. We'll be slowing down coverage a little bit, and Madeline will be turning a story that will probably further articulate some of the sciences and some of her experiences. We've interviewed an engineer, a lady in the back who was sending data back to the Hurricane Center, and who was actually communicating with the Hurricane Center as we were making landfall. So I was in the cockpit while we were making landfall, and we had verified we were entering the hurricane, making landfall at a Cat 4. So, yeah, pretty amazing.
Absolutely, and we will have some of that coverage here on our digital desk for you to view. But for now, I just want to thank you for taking that flight. That was not an easy thing to do.
No.
And just for sharing the knowledge, and of course to these researchers who work so hard to get us this information so we can make forecasts and plan around hurricanes like these.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Of course.